Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth part of my presentation, Reducing Competition for the Serial Channels of Belonging, Bitcoin Modeled as White Noise and the Radical Parallelization of Work in the 21st Century. In part 4 we start to get into the current state of blockchain and a solution that I've come up with that I think could really help catapult more people to the yellow square in a safer way, okay? Some forewarning, these are my views. I implore you to find your own views. You're probably not going to like some of the things I'm going to say in this presentation, but I'm being cruel in order to be kind, I feel. And we still have everything within our power to create the future that we desire. It doesn't have to be dystopian. It's just about the choices that we decide to make, okay? So in the last talk, we uncovered all the process channels used to attack Oscar. The two-way channels are the sequestration channels. So this one on the left is associated with sequestering talent, engineering people, that kind of thing. This one down the right is associated with sequestration of essentially money. And then this diagonal one is associated with essentially it's kind of stupidity. Okay, people trying to beat a beeline to this blue square without understanding any of the secrets on it and just becoming ensnared in a web. Okay, so from a safety standpoint when interacting with networks, and I think this applies to the cryptocurrency network right now, we need to assume that all our incoming channels are compromised in some way. Okay, and we need to be careful about the information we're consuming, and we need to filter it according to our own sense and our own understanding of the world. That's very important. Okay, and we introduce the first perspective of the Romeo-Juliet diagram, and it's if Romeo or Juliet occupy the green or the blue squares, if the red or the yellow squares are immediately mutually exclusive, then neither side has an active game, and neither side can get enough information from the other to be able to make a rational decision. Okay, so just to re-emphasize this, on the yellow square you want to create some kind of dynamic that forces the red square to engage according to its ostensible values. Okay, in Romeo and Juliet this probably still wouldn't have worked. There are a few characters who suggested such a thing, but it got shut down. But, you know, just as a general rule, that's kind of what you want to do. Okay, so I would say the problem with the cryptocurrency industry at the moment is we were promised a bunch of stuff in 2014, and there's still a lot of people who want this kind of nice decentralized vision of the world, okay? But what happened was there's a bunch of ICO scams, and a lot of people ran off with a lot of money. And really nothing happened to them. There was really no comeback. Same with the banker bailouts. You know, they just run away with the money and buy off law enforcement essentially and carry on doing what they're doing. So, you know, there's a lot of insiders who are essentially crooks. That's kind of what we have to assume if we still value these kind of nice ideas from 5 or 6 years ago. And they're paying shills. And we all know that social media and crypto is loaded with shills, and they're also paying kind of self-proclaimed experts to pretend that they're doing the right thing when in reality they're really not. So, you know, we all heard the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin as a kid, and I think this is sort of a problem in cryptocurrency today. There's a lot of people with a naive understanding of the situation being led around by people spoofing or freaking signals into the network in order to extract resources from them. So, you know, first thing, why are the products being delivered on Ethereum so different from the original vision? You know, we had this idea of a Turing complete global computer, and all we've got is a few kind of token contracts and this idea of DeFi. And is DeFi either decentralized or financial in any serious sense? We need to ask these questions. A lot of these DeFi products run on centralized AWS servers. A lot of the layer 2 stuff runs on centralized systems. So what value is blockchain really adding? If we have blockchain and then 3 or 4 layers of centralized systems, what are we really doing here? Okay, if you're just out to make money, just say that, but don't call it decentralized, because it's really not. Okay, and there's a lot of people who got away with scamming their investors with absolutely no consequence whatsoever. Lisa Cheng at Vanbex, she was advising the World Bank, the UN on blockchain. She scammed her investors out of millions of dollars. Kevin Hobbs, as far as I'm aware, it was a known felon even before Vanbex, spent all the money at the Vancouver casino. What happened to these people? I don't think they went to jail. I think Lisa Cheng got a fancy job in New York straight away after. So, what's going on here? There's something incongruent going on, I would say. And, and then if we're looking at social media and we're getting information from social media, how many of those on Twitter know anything about the technology from even a basic conceptual design perspective? And then even those that do, how many of them have the systems thinking to implement it properly? Okay, so there's just generally this cult of personality thing going on, and it's not being challenged very robustly, I feel. And in order to trust people, we need to have metrics of trust and competence. And what metrics of trust and competence are we using to measure what people are saying? I don't really think we have any. We just have a bunch of shill boxes, and if they're wrong, then all that happens is there's a reputational bankruptcy event, and the shill box gets taken offline and another one gets set up. It's not good enough. And all this stuff is known about in digital reputation management anyway, and we're still doing it. So, where's the general competence? I would ask. I don't really see it. And what are the range of possible agendas of those on the inside? There's a lot of people mining Bitcoin from illegal or gray market energy sources. There's the whole gamut of ICO scams. This looks nothing like the vision that was presented in the beginning. And did these people have any intention in the beginning of fulfilling the agenda they presented, or did they just want to go off and carry on being criminals? Okay, and and then the main thing is, how can we engage with this industry while not being led around by the nose by these people? Okay. I'd say blockchain on social media is just this. It's just kind of personality cults and people with money stating their opinions, and then a bunch of people, just because they've got money, accepting them as given. That's not how the real world works, okay? So really, the people in the cryptocurrency / blockchain industry who still want these nice things that were promised in 2014, like decentralized Uber, for example, very basic thing, it still doesn't exist. Why is that? Need to consider all their incoming channels as having been compromised by essentially the scammers and the kind of Bitcoin mining mafia that are kind of perverting the original agenda. Okay, so all the good people really need to still think of themselves as Oscar. Okay. The good news is these self-proclaimed experts are not very good. There's a very strong shortage of genuine talent in this industry. And if anyone can reasonably challenge this red square, they'll blow it out of the water. And it's very costly for insiders to defend this red square at the moment, because as soon as they deploy a lot of resources into the red square, the price is going to get bid up a lot, and they could get caught in a short squeeze. So for me, the key is to attack this yellow square, okay? And just to hammer down on that, in crypto at the moment, we don't even have to think of this left-hand channel as a sequestration channel, unless we just sort of throw ourselves into the arms of these people without thinking. If we still hold true to our values and we're critical thinkers and we think for ourselves, we don't really even have to worry about this left-hand sequestration channel. Who cares what any cryptocurrency expert has to say? If any industry has had a bad track record, apart from people saying, Bitcoin to the moon, Ethereum to the moon. In terms of people who are actually thinking about this technology that can be put to work in more diverse ways than just as a unit of account on a trading chart, nobody really has to give a shit what they say, okay? Because they've all failed. They're all losers and they've all failed, basically, no matter what the price is. So, and in this Romeo-Juliet diagram, what we want is for yellow and red to be mutually inclusive as to mutually exclusive. And just to hammer the point, a lot of shills are also self-proclaimed experts, and a lot of self-proclaimed experts are also shills. So these red and yellow squares at the moment are already mutually inclusive, and you don't really have to do much to create an active game here. It's game on. The insiders have a lot of resources, but it's game on because these yellow and red squares are currently very weak, I would say, and just waiting to be attacked. And I'd say the way to attack it is just to have a product that solves a problem that people want to use, okay? Like MetaMask, like Brave Browser, very basic, simple things that solve a problem that people like, okay? And then these self-proclaimed experts, if they don't like it, doesn't matter, okay? They can have their mental meltdown, but it's not going to really make one blind bit of difference if you're building products properly. And building products properly shouldn't be hard. We all have a big education system. We're all well educated. A lot of us have studied computer science and project management and things. So it shouldn't be hard for us, but we're making it very hard for ourselves, okay? And I would say it's because so many of the products on the yellow square is just so weak, and there's just such piffle and just padding out ideas as opposed to building things that people actually want to use. And then they just sort of build out this crap and then wait for these sort of self-proclaimed experts to tell them how wonderful they are. But in terms of this other view of the Romeo-Juliet diagram, okay, and this is probably the best view of it, is in Romeo and Juliet, the play, Romeo on the yellow square and Juliet on the red square were waiting for information from each other that would allow them to connect. And they ended up waiting so long that they killed themselves at the end, okay? And this is what is called in process calculus terms a deathly embrace. And in JavaScript thinking, we can model this like Romeo and Juliet are both awaiting an asynchronous communication from each other that gives them direction on what is the right answer. But if they're both just sat there waiting, they can wait forever, okay? And eventually people just get so fed up. And this is how very, very bad things can happen in an environment like this. And this is sort of what's happening in crypto at the moment, is on this yellow square we've got kind of shameless DeFi money grabs, lots of kind of centralized stuff layered on top of Ethereum, very weak products, narrow-minded visions, a lot of people who just made a lot of money too easily and then think that gives them the right to speak about things that are not in their remit, a general poor understanding of the technology amongst the communities, feeble leadership all around. In terms of product development, it's been absolutely disgraceful. And then a lot of like personality cults, around Vitalik Buterin and that ilk, sort of hanging on their every word, when really, Ethereum's kind of been proven to me to be a pile of crap already. And then sort of why are we still listening to Vitalik Buterin, okay? And this sort of environment is a stalemate that is a petri dish. It's like a stagnant pool, and it just gives rise to so many kind of pathogens within it, and that need to be washed out and removed, okay? If we remain in this state for too long, mosquitoes are going to start laying eggs in it and giving us malaria, I believe. So, another way to think about this is freaking, okay? And Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, before they built Apple computers, would build these freaker boxes. And this is before there was a separation of concerns between the resource management side of the telephone network and the voice tonality of the network. So you could pump in signals to the telephone network willy-nilly and get free resources from it, free international calls, for example. And this is sort of what these scammers are doing to us right now. And what we need is to separate the resource management side from the tonality side and give ordinary people a kind of a Bell Telephones 4ESS security system that insulates them from the noises more generally being made on the network and gives them a predictable resource management environment that's safe. And right now that doesn't exist, and that's what's making it so hard on the yellow square, I feel. So in terms of changes to communities, there's a lot of crypto community stuff out there, and it's not really doing very much. And I think the number one thing is communities need to focus on building product. Okay, and in order to do that, they need a better grasp of the basic fundamental technology, what the benefits and drawbacks of the different tech stacks are, and what the best things to build on the different tech stacks are. Okay, and communities need to be able to challenge the narrative. Okay, it's not about getting along; it's about building stuff, and getting along are mutually exclusive. Okay, and this is why we have our personal life and our work life. Okay, they're two different things. And building, reveals true identities, reputations, and incentives, and maximizes the collective intelligence of the network. Okay, if the network is stagnant like this, then there's no intelligence coming from it. It's just waiting on asynchronous communication in perpetuity. Okay, and anyone can just say what they want in the meantime. Okay, but if we build properly, it reveals the most information. Okay, and I would say cherish your deep thinkers and creatives and build teams around them. Okay, right now I think we're ostracizing the deep thinkers and creatives because they're too threatening to the status quo. So we actively need to cherish them and create a culture that rewards risk takers and truth tellers and punishes shirkers and liars, LARPers and imposters. This is how we maximize collective intelligence. Okay, we need to make it expensive to bluff. Okay, and people who have good hands and bet into the pot, need to be rewarded, and people who have weak hands who are bluffing need to be punished. Okay. We all should know this already, and it's sad that I have to say it again, but it should be obvious, and reward the people who reveal the true colors of others, good or bad. So this means, reward people who punch imposters in the nose, but also means reward people who nurture quiet, shy, deep thinkers who might be being left out or ostracized in the general kind of hoi polloi of community activity, and allow them to demonstrate their true value to the group. Okay, so it works both ways, and especially severely punish those in leadership roles not leading. I think that's a mortal sin. Okay, those stopping, blocking, and critical of action are bad actors by definition, and that's because as a community, you need to define your risk gates and the points at which decisions are made to either stop projects or allocate projects more resources. Okay, this is typical in the corporate world, and the reason you have risk gates is number one, to maximize value for the group, but also number two, to stop bad actors within your organization blocking action where action could increase opportunity for the organization. They might be blocking action for personal reasons, all kinds of reasons. So define your risk gates, and then anyone who's stopping anything getting to a risk gate is you can just single out as a bad actor, and they can't hide in the fog of the thing. Okay, and anyone in the way of the path to reveal preference or reputation is antisocial by definition, because revealing preference and reputation is what provides collective intelligence. And if they're stopping doing that, then they have their own agenda, and it's probably because they don't want their preferences and reputation to be revealed. So they're automatically revealing themselves. Okay, it should be very basic stuff, but that's how it is. Okay, and hypocrites just need to get out. They need to decide whether they'll back up what they say with action, or whether they're actually not as moral as they say they are. They need to decide who they want to be. Okay, if people are saying one thing and doing another, you need to make them leave, because it's just toxic for everyone else. Okay, and community managers should be 80% focused on teams building, because that's what reveals the collective intelligence, and then sort of 20% focused on the nicey stuff. Okay. So collective intelligence only works when something is at stake that can either be lost or capitalized upon. So it doesn't work when people have good ideas that they physically can't capitalize upon, like we have now. But it also doesn't work when people can just say what they like and do what they like without fear of losing anything. And we kind of have the worst of both worlds right now, and we really need to kind of close this gap, okay, between kind of demagogues and engineers, I would argue. Okay. And as humans, we're forced to make better decisions and to learn when we're faced with both risk and reward. So we should have positive punishment and positive reward. Okay. Not neither nor, not positive punishment and negative reward, and not positive reward and negative punishment. Okay, both need to be explicit. Okay, and this is like in poker. If we play poker with no ante, then nobody should rationally play unless they have the nuts. So if there's no blinds or no ante in a poker game, the only rational hand that you would raise with when the two cards are first dealt in Texas Hold'em would be ace-ace. Okay, and if you get ace-ace, you're going to go all in. Okay, and then if someone else has ace-ace, they can decide if they want to go in on a coin toss or just not bother. But this minimizes revealed intelligence to the network about people's hands, how they play their hands, what their strategy is, etc., etc. Okay, so, and we shouldn't have 100% blinds, 100% antes either, but there's a happy medium, and we need to sort of decide in our communities what the ante should be and what the drawbacks and benefits of high versus low are. And no ante is just a cardinal sin. Okay. If we imagine we're casino operators, okay, and the community are in our casino, we have nothing to lose by kicking out those who don't bet and just mill about. Okay. Number one, they're not adding anything to our takings. And number two, we have no idea what they're doing. They could be there scoping out the security network. They could be there trying to hustle weak dealers. You know, any dealer lifting their whole cards too high, they might be trying to catch that and then signal to someone at a table. It's just a massive sink of liability that nobody needs. And, you know, do something or get out. You know, spend money or get out. Okay. And especially if that's all leaders are doing, you're just opening yourself up to a whole world of pain. Okay. The leaders really need to get a grip on what's going on. Collective intelligence, it's like a casino where everyone can win, but nobody can win if nobody's taking responsibility. Okay. And lastly, even if you get through just due to the lack of general signals coming from anyone else, even if you get through this kind of milling about behavior, you know, if it becomes embedded in your culture when it comes to compete in the real world, against people who've been training properly with the right attitude, you're going to get your ass handed to you. Okay, so you really just can't win with this kind of attitude. Just to anchor the point, if there's this kind of stagnant petri dish, deadly embrace situation going on where everyone's waiting on each other for signals and no one's really taking the personal responsibility, your community can be open to malicious infiltration, padded out with kind of paid repudiators who can attack those doing constructive things. Fiefdoms and gangs, that's just sort of human nature and leads to a lot of infighting and underhandedness that can get out of control if you don't put a lid on it. And community managers, if they're not trained properly and given the right instructions on what to do, can just kind of pick favorites for reasons that have nothing to do with your business. And that just feeds into further kind of infighting and underhandedness. Okay. And also, the business environment today is just full of Dunning-Kruger type middle managers who think they know when they really don't. And we all understand what this is like in the corporate world, but it's spilling over into the kind of crypto community at the moment. And I see a lot of communities just being used as magic mirrors that these kind of clueless middle managers straight out of Ricky Gervais just use to look at themselves in and feel good about themselves. And this is not innovation. It's just sucking up and brown nosing. You're going to get, if you let that carry on in the real marketplace with proper people about, you're going to get your ass handed to you when it's time to really compete. You're going to be really embarrassed, so you really need to put a lid on that stuff, okay? We could say that there's a lot of those on the green square can't really play poker. It's not really in their character, or they don't have the intellect for it or whatever. But, this all comes down to old-fashioned kind of officer class, NCO class stuff, okay? So if people don't have it within them to play poker well, they can follow clear rules. They can be constructive and helpful. It's all just basic stuff, okay? It's all basic military stuff, okay? So, and if your community members are so undisciplined and just so used to lazing about and not building anything and not being constructive, then your community is pretty much worthless and you have nothing to lose by just dumping it and trying to start all over again, okay? And now we'll get on to a nice idea I came up with, and it's not the only answer, okay? There will be many answers to building utilities, kind of public utilities on the yellow square that give more people better and safer access to the yellow square, okay? But in my opinion, this is a great answer. Okay, and in order to make the yellow square safe for engineers, we need to build systems that inherently throttle sequestration and Sybil attacks. We need to build ongoing live games that can be put to multiple purposes that can't be taken down, okay? And allow for information sharings in ways that are broadly predictable in the aggregate, but unpredictable in the specific, which kind of makes them siren server sequestration proof, okay? And this makes it safe for kind of ordinary people and skilled professionals to share their data online, okay? And that's something we're failing at right now, and it's a very obvious blockchain use case. And it just saddens me that no one's really exploring this in the depth that it should be explored. So the basics of Penrose tiling, there are multiple possible Penrose tilings. This is just one possible one, okay? You make this kite shape and this dart shape from this rhombus according to these rules, okay? And then you, on a tiling plane, you connect them up with the heads touching the heads and the tails touching the tails. And there's also some broader global kind of coordination rules that you have to follow as well, but that's sort of the basic principle, okay? And this this creates an aperiodic tiling plane, which tiles the plane perfectly, but in a way that is unpredictable. Okay, but the unpredictability is related to the phi ratio. So essentially, with a Penrose tiling plane, we have a natural house with natural odds. And in crypto right now, there's a lot of people building all these speculative instruments with the rubber never really meeting the road. And with Penrose tiling, we have a natural speculation mechanism that is AI proof, and while unpredictable in the specific, is relatively predictable in the aggregate, therefore making it easy for actuaries to price, and quite easy to find its place on the red square. Okay, so if we imagine a kind of a blockchain game where kites and darts are kind of ERC 20 tokens, okay, and they get minted to your wallet in the phi ratio, okay, and then two players start a game on a tiling plane smart contract, okay, which is similar to a purse. It's like a kind of a multi-access wallet, and players place the tiles according to the general rules of the Penrose tiling, both local and global, okay. And what's special about this is that there are a mathematical infinity of possible Penrose aperiodic tiling planes, and each plane extends to infinity. So any patterns that exist within this aperiodic tiling plane correspond to the phi ratio. So it's impossible to predict any pattern that comes up any better than phi. Okay, and if we start playing this game on an object capability blockchain, it can support almost any pattern of privacy and authorization, and this makes this game Siren server and AI proof, but also fairly straightforward to price in the aggregate. Okay, it's Siren server and AI proof because neither AI nor a Siren server can predict the outcome better than phi. So, you know, it's just a case of where you truncate phi, and you know, and a super duper data server might be able to truncate phi to a billion decimal places, but that's not really going to get you much more kind of actionable edge in the market than doing it to a million decimal places, for example. Okay, so, and then if we imagine that we load these tiles or tokens with data, and we're playing this game on this tiling board, if we load the tiles with integers, we have a game that kind of looks a lot like dominoes. Okay, if we load it with playing cards, okay, we could have games of the nature of poker, snap, rummy, or bridge. If we load it with JSON, dictionaries, tuples, and arrays, kind of typical computer science type data structures, we're talking video game items, okay? And if we load it with Git repo derivatives that prove the existence of and provenance of designs, then we're able to put engineering data and stake engineering data in a game, okay? And if we just think in terms of dominoes initially, here's the 7 basic patterns that are possible on a Penrose tiling, and we could have a game. I mean, the game dynamics you could create on top of this Penrose tiling are infinite, but this is just to get us started. Say every time you make one of these shapes, you win, okay? And then say you make an ace, and this kite here has a 4 on it, this other kite has a 3 on it, and then you add the dart at the top that has a 3 on it, you get 10 points, for example. Okay, so that's just one example of one game mechanic, and it's useful to start thinking in these terms. And once you kind of wrapped your head around dominoes, start thinking playing cards. Okay, and with something like a poker mechanic, players could stake tiles in order to gain more tiles. Okay, or perhaps lose the tiles if someone else wins them. Okay, so you've kind of got a staking win or lose mechanic here, which is fairly similar to a proof of stake blockchain. Okay. And then if we think in these terms, we can start to think of how knowledge could be staked in a game, and how we can start safely sharing sensitive information like engineering data or designs with each other in a way that's fairly predictable and resistant to the negative impacts of sharing data on the internet currently. Okay, so then expand our thinking. Tiles could be staked with artwork, photography, videos, or proof of existence thereof. We could kind of create safe artistic communities this way. I think definitely the artistic communities on the internet today are sorely lacking for safe spaces to share and comment and help with each other's work and develop in a way that's resistant to kind of negative attention and your work essentially just being stolen. Okay, the vaporwave community is a good example of this. A lot of talented vaporwave artists never really got recognized for their work. A lot of them fell on hard times, and then now Nike and Adidas are stealing the aesthetic for free. I mean, if that's not kind of Soylent Green-ish, I don't know what is. And we really need to help our artists today. I really believe that. And I think that's, for me, the number one blockchain use case at the moment. And, if we're talking video games, people punt about this idea of the multiverse a lot. Okay, when I worked with Engine as part of their early adopter program, it's very hard to create multiverse items because you'd have to negotiate individually with every other game in the multiverse and decide what your item was worth in their game. Okay, and it's unrealistic to expect indie game developers to be making bilateral trade deals with thousands of other games for every individual item they make. What makes more sense is to have foundational, simple mechanics that are powerful, that can operate across all games. And I believe this kind of Penrose tiling idea could operate in any game, and allow players to trade in and out of items between games as well, without having this kind of cumbersome multi-party bilateral trade thing going on. If this Penrose tiling could be a lot like a kind of a NASDAQ stock exchange for the multiverse, just a trading mechanic and game mechanic that all games can plug into and work on top of. And I think it's much more useful to think in terms of creating trading utilities and game mechanic utilities for this multiverse idea than it is just to mint up a bunch of ERC20 and 721 tokens and then have this never-ending kind of bartering that going on between different games that ends up becoming very cumbersome and ultimately quite absurd. So, and ultimately, in terms of my business vision, I'm very excited about the idea of staking tiles with engineering data derived from a Git repo, because a Git repo is built on top of a Merkle tree. So it's a Merkle tree just like Factom is a Merkle tree and Bitcoin is a Merkle tree. So there's similar properties there that we can take advantage of. And I'll probably get into that in a later talk. So there's a wealth of information on Penrose tiling online. It's a niche subject, at least in public. I think the defense industry has taken advantage of it in more than a few ways. But mostly online, you'll find it's subject covered by amateurs, artists, and mathematicians. And I'll put some links in the description to the video, and you can explore some more. It's really fascinating stuff. So one thing I noticed while I was researching this is that if you look at these shapes here, these Penrose tiling shapes here, they do correlate with the skin, the fuselage of the Lockheed F117A. And you can imagine if Penrose tiling is based on the phi ratio, the phi is known as the noisy number, okay? And if radar signals are bouncing off of these Penrose-like surfaces, and probably this fuselage is covered in some kind of quasi-crystal, which also has phi-like and Penrose-like properties, then the radar signal is just going to bounce off as noise, okay? So if it's good enough for Lockheed, I think it's good enough for us. Some other interesting things, I think polyominoes is something interesting to explore, and I'll put a link in the description to that, because that gives us a tiling game piece factory that could potentially be very powerful. Martin Gardner did a lot of work with Roger Penrose. So did John Horton Conway. He's famous for the game of life. I think we're in building out blockchain functionality. We're kind of building out a game of life where knowledge is fertilized. There's kind of a knowledge mating season, and then the synergies from that kind of peel off and become their own autonomous things. So we can learn a lot from studying these greats of the past, and I suggest we do more of that and less kind of money chasing and shameless shilling. Okay, so in conclusion, in order to challenge this stale orthodoxy, we need to be more disciplined about getting live and building product. Okay, and I'd say gaming is most likely the key to unlocking the yellow square. It's not DeFi. Okay, I think DeFi, you're just running into an obvious sequestration channel there. We need to start creating games and safe spaces for knowledge sharing. And this will put pressure on these so-called experts to call or fold. Okay, and I'm very excited about gamified Penrose tiling on a blockchain. I think it's a marriage made in heaven. But I would suggest that everyone listening to this talk go and do some research on some of the great minds of the past and what they thought, and try and find some more synergies of old ideas meeting with new ideas, instead of just shamelessly chasing the money. So thanks very much for listening to my talk. Please comment in the comment section if you have any questions or any further ideas. And yeah, I'll be back with part 5 probably in a couple of weeks. Thanks.